One day, Flying Scottsman was coming home after pulling a train from the main line. The fog was thick, but he didn't mind. And suddenly, he heard a strange sound. His driver stopped him. "What was that?" asked Flying Scotsman. "I don't know," replied his driver. "Let's wait here and see if we hear it again." Suddenly, out of the fog, a black engine. The engine stopped and looked at the Flying Scotsman. Flying Scotsman started to feel very uncomfortable. There was something very unsettling about that engine, and he could feel it. His driver and fireman felt the same, but what Flying Scottsman didn't realize was that his driver and fireman were both shivering in the cab. No one knows what happened next. Suddenly, the strange engine let out a huge and violent shriek that echoed all over the area. Flying Scotsman gasped in horror. His driver and fireman were also scared too. It was easy to admit there was something very, very unsettling about that train. His driver opened the regulator, and Flying Scottsman raced away as fast as his wheels could carry him. The next morning, Flying Scottsman returned to the island of Sodor with another express train. He later met up with Percy and was telling him about the strange engine he had saw the other night. "How big was this engine?" asked Percy. "Well, compared to all the other engines I've seen on the mainland, this was the biggest of them all," replied Flying Scotsman. "What kind of sound did this engine make?" asked Percy. "It just made this long and loud shrieking noise," replied the Flying Scotsman. "What color was this big engine?" asked Percy. "This engine I saw was all black, all over. I couldn't even tell who he was, let alone see his face." "Really? So you're saying that this was a big black engine that you saw?" "From what I saw, it showed." Just then, Edward puffed into the yard. "What's going on?" he asked. "Flying Scotsman saw a ghost last night," replied Percy. "I didn't say it was a ghost, Percy. I said it was a strange black engine. I don't know if it was a ghost or not." "Did you say you saw a black engine?" asked Edward. "That is very correct, my dear Edward," replied the Flying Scotsman. "I think I might know what you're talking about," said Edward. "A black engine that is very mysterious. Did he make a strange shrieking sound?" "Yes, Edward," replied Flying Scotsman. "You saw the black engine, didn't you?" asked Edward with envy. "Yes," replied Flying Scotsman. "I've heard of this engine," replied Edward. "He is known as the Black Train." "Have you seen it before?" asked Flying Scotsman. "No," replied Edward, "but I've heard of it from other engines that I've known who have seen it." Percy and the Flying Scottsman were shocked. Anyways, replied Edward, I must go. Sir Topham Hatt needs me to collect a special train for this afternoon. Goodbye. And he puffed away. Percy and the Flying Scotsman were speechless for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, Percy and Edward were on their way home after a long day's work. As they puffed along the line, the wind howled, and the fog was starting to come in, when suddenly... Bust my buffers, cried Percy. What was that? I don't know. But whatever it was, I've never heard a sound like that before. Then suddenly... out of the fog popped a big, black engine. The engine stopped and stared at Percy. Percy and Edward shivered with fear. They knew who it was. Their drivers and firemen were also scared too. They also knew what it was too. Percy whispered to Edward. Edward? Yes, Percy? But before anyone could reply, the engine let out a huge shriek. Bust my buttons, cried Percy. It's the black train, he cried. Come on, Percy, let's get out of here. But then there was trouble. Edward's safety valve burst. Now he couldn't go anywhere. Oh, bother, cried Edward. Don't worry, Edward, I'll get us out of here. But there was trouble again. Percy had realized he had run out of coal. Now they were both trapped. Percy and Edward whistled frantically. Help! Help! We're over here! Please, somebody help us! They both whistled frantically, but no one could hear them. Further down the line, Flying Scotsman heard Percy and Edward's whistles. That sounds like Percy and Edward. They must be in trouble, he thought. Then suddenly, he heard something else. Oh no, cried Flying Scotsman. That sounds like the black train. This suddenly infuriated Flying Scotsman. All right, black train, you have gone way too far this time. You will not hurt my friends. Prepare to be in for a world of hurt and agony, he said angrily. He took off down the line. Flying Scotsman came around the bend, and there it was, the black train. Further up the line, Flying Scotsman saw Edward and Percy, who were both white as ghosts. Please help us, cried Edward and Percy. Get us out of here, please. Hold on, cried Flying Scotsman. I'll help you. You will not hurt my friends, cried Flying Scotsman, and he rushed forward and bumped the train. The black train shrieked in pain. Its shriek echoed all around the valley. When suddenly, it disappeared. Did it just disappear? Asked Percy. I guess it did, replied the Flying Scotsman. Phew. That's a relief, said Edward. Now then, let's all get out of here and go home. Agreed, cried Percy. Flying Scotsman, I'm out of coal, and Edward burst his safety valve. Could you help us back to the sheds, please? Of course, replied the Flying Scotsman. Anything for Sir Topham Hatt's engines. Flying Scotsman buffered up to Percy and Edward. And they all went home to Tidmouth Sheds. Back at Tidmouth Sheds, Flying Scotsman spoke first. Are you both all right? Asked Flying Scotsman worriedly. Yes, replied Percy and Edward. Thank you for helping us, said Percy. Oh yes, said Edward. Thank you for helping. Oh, you're welcome. Anything for Sir Topham Hatt's engines. Do you think we'll ever see the Black Train again? Asked Percy nervously. Oh, I don't think so, replied the Flying Scotsman. He is probably long gone now. I sure hope so, replied Edward. I thought we were goners there for a second. So did I, replied Percy. Well, the good thing is, you weren't. Agreed, replied Edward in relief.